Now, security consultant Sadiq Shehu joins us now from Abuja. Now, Sadiq, good morning. It's good to have you join us, Group Captain. Now, the allocation to budget is one thing Nigerians have been talking about. You know, we remember in the days of the military, the defense always gets the highest amount of budget every year, and so on. Right now, from this year to the projection for next year, we see that there's a reduction. What concerns do you have?
I'm not hearing very well.
Group Captain, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good, good. It's good to have you join us. What concerns do you have? There seems to be a reduction in the budgetary allocation to the Ministry of Defense between 2018 and for the 2019 projection. What's your concern?
Hello?
Okay, we seem to be having
we seem to have connectivity
issues there with Group Captain Sadiq Shehu hearing us. So hopefully we can get that fixed as quickly as possible so that we can get this discussion going. Defense budget reduced from 580 in 2018 to 435.
Or so 35.
Yeah, they're about 435.62 billion in 2019. What exactly is the thinking behind this reduction? Is you know, government saying that indeed, just like they've been saying, that we have technically defeated Boko Haram and all the rest of them? Are they, you know, backing that by action, saying because we have succeeded to a very large extent in defeating Boko Haram, there is no need for us to even, you know, add even more funds to the defense budget?
Remember this earlier this year we had the issue of allocation. Sorry, the contract for the purchase of Super Tucano, about 12 Super Tucano planes from the United States. So that's a major investment in defense already. So I guess I'm just trying to, I'm not in the military, I'm trying to figure it out. So the point there is that's a major investment in defense already. So if we're expecting, even though we're not expecting the Super Tucanos
until 2020, late 2020.
But the point there is, some of the allocations this year have also acquired some aircraft from Pakistan and so on. So maybe they're looking at utilizing exactly. They're looking at the major hardware have been, you know, assigned.
All right, it looks like security consultant Sadiq Shehu, Group Captain Sadiq Shehu, is back on the line. We're able to reconnect with him. Confirm that you can hear us. Good morning once again.
Good morning.
Okay, the question you were trying to
yes,
pose to
I was saying between 2018 and the 2019 projection, budgetary allocation to defense have been reduced for the 2019 budget projection. What is your concern?
Thank you very much for that question. My concern, which I have expressed in several fora, is that when we look at the experience of countries at war, pari passu what they spend in on their armed forces or in security in general, honest, what we see in Nigeria is a paradox. Not only the difference between 2018 and the recently released 2019 figures, where we see a reduction. If you research and look back as far back as when the Boko Haram started, we can put it to around 2000 or 2011, depending on where you go. Experience of other countries show that when there is war, they spend more on the military or on defense. This is a very rational decision. But when we look at the figures in Nigeria, we see generally, apart from 1999, that Nigeria spent 1.3% of its GDP on defense. From 2010 up to last year, up to this year, Nigeria has not spent up to 1% of GDP for any year on defense. How do we rate whether this is good or bad? We look at what other countries do. In fact, beginning with the sub-region here, we have the multinational joint task force, which comprises Nigeria, Niger, Chad, Cameroon, and Benin. When you look at the figures of defense spending of these countries over the years, there is none of them that doesn't spend over 1%. Like I told you, Nigeria has been spending less than 1%. The highest that Nigeria has spent been 0.89, I think. After that, we have been maintaining almost consistently 0.4%. Niger, Chad, all these countries, they spend over this amount of their GDP. In fact, when you look at Chad, Chad spends almost, sometimes even 7% of its GDP on defense. Now, in the international security circle, you rate a country's spending using two criteria. Either you look at it as a percentage of the total budget, or you look at it as a percentage of the GDP. But most often, experts and even international monetary organizations, World Bank, IMF, the United Nations, if they want to rate a country's spending on defense, they use percentage of GDP. So much so that using these international standards, there is a recommendation for what countries should spend on defense. IMF, World Bank, and even the United Nations recommend that countries should spend between 1.5% to 3.3%. Remember, I have told you we are spending 0.4%. Now, that 1.5% to 3.3 is a recommendation for a country at peace.
Wow.
Generally, when a country is at war, you expect it to go even higher than that upper margin of 3.3. Unfortunately, I don't know whether through a mismatch on our priorities or discussion between the budget handlers and the leaders of our security architecture, it is very glaring. Whether you check CIPRI, whether you check the international military balance, whether you check World Bank figures that are released every year, Nigeria is greatly underspending vis-a-vis the security challenges that it is facing. So now again, two terms are necessary for our understanding of this debate. You may talk of defense and security spending. In this case now you are talking about security, spending both on military and on other security services like police, DSS and the rest. That is a general term, DSS. But when you talk about military spending or defense spending, you are actually talking only on the spending that is done on the military. In Nigeria, you can talk of the Army, Navy, and the Air Force in that order. However, whether we take DSS, whether we take military spending only, Nigeria is not spending enough on its current security challenges. So in all honesty, I am concerned that instead of seeing increases that we see in other countries, Nigeria is spending. 2016.
So if I may come in, retired group captain, what do you think really, were the things that government may have factored in into this reduction in the budget for defense? Because we're trying to wrap our minds around it, because possibly there have been other expenses in other in other areas, like the Super Tucano and all the rest of them, that may have informed these figures. But what do you think is playing out or may have played out in reaching these figures?
Yes, what a country spends on its armed forces is a reflection of, the threats that are facing it, whether it is at war or not, or what kind of deterrence posture it wants to project in a certain region or sub-region that it is located. It may also show what the country intends to play in the international arena. Like, for example, Nigeria prides itself as a superpower in West Africa. If that reason is taken, then certainly our defense spending should reflect that. Unfortunately, it is not. Regarding factors that lead to what a country spends on defense, definitely the general economic climate will be one of such factors. For Nigeria, that is an oil-producing country, it has shown that all oil-producing countries, their budget normally fluctuates with the price or expected price of oil all over the world. So while I agree, because the president has already sounded a warning even before releasing this budget, that the economy is in a bad shape. However, even with that, what I am saying, so when you say the economy is in bad shape, it is expected that all the sectors will receive a decrease. But what I want people to understand is that even without the decrease or with the decrease, the proportion we are spending on the defense is not enough. 2016 World Bank figures always rates the highest defense spenders out of the countries in the world and the lowest. In the 2016, which is the last figure I've obtained, out of the 30 countries that are spending highest as a proportion of GDP, surprisingly, you find countries like Mali, which is facing an insurgency. That's in Africa. You also find countries like Malawi. You find even countries like Sierra Leone in that list. However, Nigeria is listed among the lowest 30 spending. And among the lowest 30 spending, Nigeria is even number 3 from the bottom. The point I'm making, I brought the example of Mali being among the top 30, and then Nigeria being a lower 30. You can understand Mali going there. It is a relatively poor country.
All right.
It understands that since it is having an insurgency,
yeah,
it has to increase spending.
Group
that
Captain
awareness
Chill
has not really come home in Nigeria, unfortunately.
Yes, Group Captain, the point there is...
And sorry, please, you asked, sorry, let me add that you talk about the Tucano spending. Yes, I had the Chief of Defense Staff sometimes saying that you cannot, you cannot provide for all the needs of the armed forces from budgetary allocation. Again, that is actually true. When you look at countries that have faced insurgency, like Colombia, you have to look for extra budgetary spending. The Tucano spending, I believe it comes from the excess crude account, which is, not a budgetary allocation.
Yes.
I want to see Nigeria, if we want to really play proportionally to what is facing us, we have to have a lot more of these interventions out of the budget that has been released. The budget as released now is not likely. It's not likely. And one thing we are forgetting, preparing your military for challenges should be a yearly in and out. It should be something you should bring over the years, whether there is war or not war. Because if a country lives until it is having challenges like we are having now, it is then that you are going to plug all the loopholes that the armed forces have. Then honest, you have a very, very big challenge. So if there is any lesson we learned now, as I have shown since 1919, we have not been fully financing our defense. We should be doing it year in, year out, whether we finish Boko Haram or not.
All right. We all agree, yeah, Group Captain, we all agree that certainly there can't be enough budgetary allocation to issues of security, not to talk of just defense. When it comes to security, generally, there can't be enough allocation to it. But if we look at how much money we're talking about, one would also say that when you also consider the price of military hardware, from the highest to the lowest, they're quite expensive. And it takes time for all of these things to be produced. But would you say there are justifications even for the monies that have been allocated so far when we hear from the foot soldiers that they don't have some of the very elementary and some of the very common and basic weapons to even fight Boko Haram?
Thank you very much. While advocating for more funding of defense, it is only reasonable and responsible to also call on all the oversight bodies, right from the executive and the legislature, to follow where the money is. Certainly, if you release money and if you don't follow through, it is going to be, it's going to be looted or stolen or misappropriated. So again, while I'm saying these are two different things, first, release enough. But when you release enough, you don't just sit down and wait for people to self-report. In the Nigerian arrangement, we have various levels of oversight, starting from the Ministry of Defense up to the legislative side. They need to do a lot of oversight because, in all honesty, it wouldn't be fair again to release the money and then the money does not get used as it was budgeted. So release enough money, but then follow through. Following through, it's never an offense. This is always my argument. It's never an offense for the Senate Committee on Defense or the Armed Forces Committee in the House of Representatives to say, what and what did you use this? Hold these people accountable that have given money. But first, before we get there, release enough money for them.
Okay.
Release enough money for them,
all right,
then follow up.
Word there. Thank you very much, Group Captain Sadiq Shehu, retired counterterrorism expert. Thank you for talking to us this morning. Thank you.